Hi, welcome to my blog. My name is Tom Shue, and today we're going to do part 3, or the final, of this image folio project, where we've been loading selections inside layer masks and creating this photo album covers and inside sheets. So just roughly, here's the front and back cover with the spine. This is the front inside cover, and this is the rear inside cover. Notice I carried the theme of the green with the textured all the way through the image on all the pages, and just tried to, make a consistent design element throughout. Now, the reason why you see a vast difference between the back cover and the front cover is I plan on using this cover as merchandising to sell other portfolios to clients. So the back was supposed to be like a kind of a real exotic creative type of background, and the front is more of a conservative. Okay, so let's dive in and look at how we finished this up. Okay, so we'll go to our layers, and you notice that I've cleaned everything up. I talked to some people online, and they said, this is a kind of a neat project. However, it's really confusing because there's just so much going on. So I tried to clean it up a little bit so it didn't look so confusing, and I broke it up into the front, the spine, and the rear. And basically it's all just put something on, cover it up with a layer mask, and reveal it. Okay, for example, let's look at this rear cover. Let's zoom in here. You see we had that leather texture, but now we've got these circles, and then we've got these kind of wavy looking patterns along with some flourishes with a design cut through them, and it looks more complex than it actually is, because we have that leather texture, then we have another texture on top, and then we have a third border texture. Okay, and inside that texture we have some dotted masks and drop shadows and all kinds of elements. But let's just dive in and take a peek at how this is done. Let me zoom out here. Alright, so if we look at this element here, you can see if I turn this off and on, it takes a minute to catch up. It's going to turn off this border. And how this border was made is I just took a paintbrush and just filled around the edges, then I put a mask on it. So let's disable the mask. So you see that it's just painted. I just took a paintbrush and painted around the border. That's all I did. Then I put a layer mask on it by clicking on the layer mask icon, and that hides it. Okay, so we just move this over to the side. Actually, I don't know if it's going to allow us to do that, but I just put a layer mask on it, and then I painted on that layer mask, right? So if we hit a backslash, you can see that I used a brush tool to just overlay that whole mask, painting in white. Okay, so I just grabbed the brush tool, and with the white brush, with this brush selected, let's pull the brush up. This is a custom brush, a swirl brush. Okay, double click it. With this swirl brush selected, if we make this big enough you can see, with this swirl brush selected, I just clicked on that blue border, and wherever I click with white, it hid the mask. Okay, so let's back out of that, and it created the gaps in that blue. So if I disable this mask, you can see that I just took a paintbrush and painted around the edge, roughed it in, and I put some little flourishes in with another brush. So if we select the brush tool again, you can see that I've got some of these Flourish brushes. So let's find one, for example, that has that those design elements that I used. Okay, here they are, right here. So if you just zoom in on this brush, you can see that I just went ahead and clicked in these corners and created these items when I painted that blue border on this layer. This is it, just this layer by itself. Hid it all with the layer mask, and then just went over top of it with the white brush to give it that texture. So let's enable that layer mask, and that gave it the cut through. Now let's hide this one, and this one here is the same thing. You see there's some circles there. Let's disable this layer mask. Okay, and let's go ahead and bring the opacity up on this one, and it was just a white paint. So I just dropped white paint. I grabbed the selection right here, okay, and then I took the paint bucket tool. If you hit the G key, you'll get your paint bucket tool, and I painted with white, and I just filled that selection with white right there, okay. But I did it on a new layer, okay, so you can see where this was created. So I'm going to deselect that. So I just filled that in, and then I changed the blend mode to overlay, okay. So if we go to overlay, now you see it's kind of got this orangish stuff to it, so I brought the opacity down. But before we do that, actually before I put this overlay mode on so it's not confusing for you, okay, what I did is I put a layer mask on it. I'm just clicking here by Alt, and it loads it with black and it hides it. So if I click this and put a layer mask right on this layer, and then I'll just delete this mask and show you real quick. Just drag this mask down to the trash can. Yes, I want to delete that layer mask. Okay, so we're going to go back up here, and now we're just going to apply a layer mask. And if you just click on the layer mask icon, it's in white. Control Z to undo. If you hold down the Alt key, which is the Option key on the Mac, it's going to load it where it hides that texture. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to paint with white because I want to reveal white through this. So I'm going to grab my brush tool, okay, and we're going to use the circle brush that I have here. Okay, here's the circle brush. I'm going to make the brush really big, okay, something like this area, and we're going to paint on the mask with white. So we need to switch our chips over. We hit the X key on that mask, we click it, and it just reveals through the opposite of this brush that white paint from that where we filled it with the paintbrush. Then you change it to overlay. Overlay. Okay, and then we drag the opacity down to around 20%. And it gives us that texture on top of the leather of circles. Okay, so we'll zoom in here, and you can see the circle textures also on the photograph. So we just have to go in there with a regular brush. We'll grab our brush tool, okay, and we'll select a round brush this time. Double click it. Okay, we're going to size the brush down to where it fits, and we'll make it a soft brush. Okay, now we got to paint in black this time. So we need to switch their paint chips to black, and now when we paint, we'll just take away any of the texture that's on that picture. And that's how this whole thing was put together. Okay, let me undo all this. Put it back the way it was before I started messing my project up. Okay, so this is it. It's just a series of layer masks applied to different texture overlays and strokes. So let's close this up. That's the rear, and the front element is similar. You know, we have our logo on top because we want it to be on top of everything. So let's zoom in a little bit here. So we just type the logo and we put a drop shadow on it and a stroke on the letters, and then the front image, this is going to be the front cover. So let's zoom out just a hair so you can see what's going on there. So if we go to the front cover, you can see that this is just a vignette. It's a curves. So I just created a vignette just so I can burn the corner in, so it's kind of darker around the edges to draw your attention to the center of the cover. Okay, go back to our layers. That's what this layer was, just a vignette. This particular layer here is the front frame. It's really simple. We just deselect this layer mask. I did the same thing as I did on the back. I just filled that whole cover with black, put a layer mask on it, and then went in and painted with a brush, with a dry brush tool. and created this frame right here. So I used my fancy swirl brushes and just cut through it to the white. Then our image goes underneath. That's it. Now the textures are here. They're just stacked on in different layer mask mode. So this is an overlay mode, and this one is a hard light mode, and I showed you that, and that's just the color. That's the front cover. Pretty simple. And the spine is even simpler than that. Let's close this front cover down. And the spine is just the layer text, so we'll just hide that. And then we did the same thing as the curves. The curves created that vignette, so you can see I can manipulate that vignette. So undo and put it back the way it was. Okay, and it's just a spine piece. And that's it. 3 elements to the spine. So I'll close that down. And then the front cover, or inside the front cover, same exact thing. We'll just look at this one real quickly. We did the same thing. We filled it with white to create that dry brush effect over top of the image. So if I disable this layer mask, it's just going to be a white cube. Okay, so I just made a selection, dumped white paint in it, then I put a layer mask on it, filled with black by holding down the Alt key, Option key on the Mac, and then I just used those paintbrush tools to reveal the white border the way I liked it. And then these are the actual images themselves. I just put a stroke and a drop shadow and stacked each one of the images, and I made them as a smart object so I could resize them any way that I want to get them to fit without messing up the quality. And this is just a little design element here going around underneath to give it some kind of unique shape on the texture. And then here's our curves tool to darken the edge. It's like a vignette on a photograph. Same thing. If you've never seen how I do that, look at all my tutorials. I show you how to do that. And this is the front texture. Same thing. I just painted a big white and then put a layer mask on it and just clicked on it with that brush, that same brush I showed you from the other pages. And then these are the other design elements for the textures. And then there's the color. So it's pretty simple stuff, guys. The rear page, same thing. We started with the same page, but instead of having the other images, we still have that same curves tool to create the dark edge, and then the same elements as the textures. 2 textures with the layer masks, and that's it. This one has a text element on the bottom. So we have our front rear cover, front inside outside of our design portfolio, and it's all put together with selections and layer masks. So there you go. Thank you for visiting my blog today, and I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions, please don't be shy. Ask them in the comments section. Until next time, we'll see you soon.